and she has to do the clothes by her.
I'm Dr. Luz Maria. Hello.
Hi, I'm Coach Lisa Frank.
And in today's episode, I am so excited to talk with my partner, with my colleague, Lisa Frank. And we're going to dive, like, what got her to write this amazing book? So tell me, Lisa, I mean, I'm a writer myself. I write for a magazine, I've written for a newspaper, and, I've got my own books. There is something always within us that moves us into the direction to write a book. There's an intention, there's something we want to share the message. What prompted you to write a book?
Okay, Luz. Well, about 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with manic depression. Some people know it as bipolar. I had slipped into a deep depression, and we know that sometimes depression is situational.
Yes.
And at the time, so many things were going right. We had moved into our second home, and I started working in the field again, after being at home with my son for a while. And so pretty much, aside from some issues in my marriage, I was happy to be settled in. But I slipped into a deep depression, and about 3 weeks into it, a friend of mine, we were very good friends, and we were talking about it, and she has a lot of experience with someone who actually had a more serious case of bipolar disorder. And so she had a lot of experience with it, and she was listening to what I was telling her was happening. And she said, I think you need to go get checked out.
Yeah.
And I said, she explained to me what she thought it was. And so I visited a therapist, of course. And the interesting thing before that happened was that I facilitate groups wherever I work. I was working at a methadone clinic, and I was facilitating a group. And as a habit, I normally take the tools that I'm using for group and complete them myself so that I could see what it feels like from my end, or if it's even effective enough,
Okay.
right? And I took the assessment, and I was like, ooh, yeah. And so I went to the therapist, and, we talked about everything, and of course I got the diagnosis.
You got the diagnosis. I mean, and you are here in mental health. I know, like, one of the hardest thing, when you have, like, a doctor that can't help his kid, heal his kid, and being a doctor. So here you are in the world of mental health, do an assessment, and you see and you get a diagnosis. What impact did that have on you on its own?
Well, the good thing about the diagnosis, the assessment, was that it gave me a point of reference as to when the signs actually began to show. And that was actually at 13 years old. And here I am, 40 something at the time, right? And kind of surprised me in a lot of ways. But then again, I thought about the fact that, a lot of people have the gene of mental illness, but sometimes they never experience a serious trauma that actually ignites it, right? So they never experience, any of the symptoms, although it may be in their gene. And I pinpointed two incidences. And the first one, I experienced a traumatic brain injury at the age of 4. I was hit by a drunk driver and crossing the street following my sister. And they told my mom that I wasn't going to survive, and if I did, I was going to be a vegetable. And my family believes in the power of prayer, and they prayed for me. And in 3 days, I woke up from a coma and said, "Mom, I'm hungry."
Wow.
Yeah. And in 13 days total, I walked, not carried, walked out of the hospital.
That's what a gift of God. I mean, what a joy.
And the other trauma was when I was 13. My sister had a long-standing boyfriend of about I would say 3 years. So he was she was 12 years older than me, so he was like a big brother. And they got into a car accident uh, Christmas, the evening of Christmas, 1 block away from my oldest sister's house. That's where they were on their way to. And their car wrapped around a tree. And I'll never forget sitting in the emergency room,
Oh my gosh.
the screams when they called his parents down the hall to tell them he didn't make it.
Oh my God.
And my sister was just so mangled. She was in a coma for a long time. She had broken hip. She was just a mess. And when we were riding to the hospital, my other sister, we were younger, and my parents were in the front seat, and they were just like talking back and forth. Well, did she have her seatbelt? Da da da. And we're looking at each other. Like, I'm like, what is going on? They didn't tell us anything. They just woke us up out of our sleep, and we're on our way. And when we got to the emergency room, I said to my older sister, I said, "Well, what happened?" And she said, "Mina and her boyfriend were in a car accident." And then shortly after that was when they called his mother down the hall, and I'll never forget the scream. I could never forget it. And impacting it was that he was in our lives for that time, and when we went when we went home, my mom had us throw away all his pictures. And we were never allowed to attend the funeral.
Mm.
And she never said why. And my sister, so my mom had to go back to work. And at that time, you weren't allowed to go into the hospital unless you were an adult. And I was just 13. So my mom went back to work, and she was working in New York. I guess she stayed home for maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. And when she went back to work, I was like, I'm not leaving my sister in the hospital by herself. So every day after school, I would go over to Jersey City from Hoboken and visit her in the hospital. But because I was 13, I had to figure out a different way every day to get up to see her.
Yes.
And I'd come home in the afternoon with stories to my mother about how I was evading the security to get up to see her. And when she came out the coma, she was just so childlike. They were giving her these Chuckles candies because something she needed regarding sugar. And she was like, Chuckles, Chuckles, Chuckles. Every day, that's all they give me. And adding to that, my one of the nurses delivered the news to her that her boyfriend was killed in the accident. She took it upon herself. And when I got there, she was devastated. So I pinpointed that incident, the car accident where I was hit, and the burning, the trauma of being burned by my sister with the boiling hot coffee in my face.
Oh, uh, as a trauma-informed psychologist, and with the work that I do, when somebody has an experience like yours and you hear the screams, it's like reliving the trauma. Because that sound stays not only in our brain, it also gets stored in our body. and the impact it does
Yeah.
is beyond, and it does leave. And having also a brain injury when you're a little girl, the impact of it, what happens in that moment, it also gets stored in the body as well as in the brain and whatever we make sense. And we start living a life with those sounds and that pain.
And it took me years, and I mean years, to get up enough courage to ask my sister why my mother never allowed us to get closure to go to the funeral. And we were close at this point, an adult, and I finally got the courage to ask her. And she said because although he was separated from his wife, he lived on his own. He had a daughter. They were legal. He wasn't legally divorced. And my mom, being raised in the church, didn't believe in that. And so, but I still, part of me still felt angry. Like she should have at least explained
it. Yes.
Yeah.
It does, because it leaves you feeling incomplete. So at that little girl.
Because I loved him. I mean, he gave me my birthday's in February, so my birthstone is amethyst, and he gave me my first birthstone ring. He was so funny. He was just an amazing person.
Yeah. So to have him go and not feel complete, dealing with your sister's injury, trying to figure it all out. When you're a little girl of 13, stories are incomplete. So we make up and we live the world with our own assumption and pain and internal trauma.
Right.
That's giving myself also a little moment here. You mentioned a diagnosis, and some people may or may not know bipolar and manic depressive, that it's the same thing. Can you tell a little bit of our audience, what does that mean?
Well, it means that first of all, it's a mood disorder, and it means that you can go through bouts of depression that are not situational, and it's a chemical, reaction in your brain. But then there's also the manic side, and I think that's why I stayed ill longer than I did until the depression hit, because the mania is very impressive. Mm-hmm. I would be up. We decorate. I mean, I decorated a whole house in a month when we moved into our second home. My son, we moved in January. My son's birthday is the end of February, and we had a little get together with all our old friends and stuff, and they came in the house and they were like, "You lived here? Didn't you guys just move in last month?" I had borders up. I had, it was nothing for my family to wake up the next day and see the whole house redecorated, furniture moved around, because that was my way of dealing with things that I couldn't control in my life. Yes. And one of the things that was really bothering me was my marriage. And so I would just, feel like, okay, I can't change, what's going on, so let me just change this room around. So it was nothing for them to, and wake up and be like, well, did you even sleep? And then I would be sending emails and texts and stuff, and my friends would wake up the next day and was like, why did I receive a text at 3 a.m? Why did you sleep? Why weren't you asleep? Oh my God. And the common theme was, how do you do it? You are a superwoman. I want whatever you have. And that, so it was impressive. Yes. But what people don't know is that you can only go but for so long like that, and then eventually you're going to crash.
Yes.
And I think that was a part of it too, me going months, I worked around the corner, and I would actually lay the borders out so that my half-hour lunch, I could run home and put the glue on and put them up and everything. And my friends were so impressed by it. And that's kind of what kept me in it too long. When until I finally hit. And I go back to when I was a teenager. I mentioned the tears of a clown when no one's around.
Yes.
That's an old song, and in front of everybody, I was joyful, happy. But I had so many times where there was Stevens Institute, and they had like caves in the back, and I would just go up there sometimes and cry for like 2 hours at a time to relieve life's pressure. And at that time, the biggest pressure was the sibling rivalry, where my sister was just constantly picking on me all the time.
As I'm hearing, I hope listeners are listening, when we think of mania, a lot of people just think of grandiose.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're going to be the president, you're going to overtake the world.
Yeah.
But another way of it that it manifests itself is you get onto this go, 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 go,
Yes.
unstoppable, and
Yes.
the sensation of being in that space of unstoppable.
And you can overspend. So, to rectify that,
Yeah.
I had to start using a cash-only system, because when the cash, you're looking at your cash, it's easy to swipe a card,
Yeah.
but when you're constantly looking at your cash, and whether it's, and that was successful for me until I could get to the place where I wasn't. And now, if it comes up, I already know if I'm up at 2:00 in the morning and I'm looking at stuff on Amazon, which I just throw in my cart and don't buy, but I know that, okay, I'm not in a good place, and what's going on with that. Yeah.
So does this still continue to manifest in you? What is, can you tell us a little bit?
Not so much the depression, because the only thing I was able to take was antidepressants. I wasn't able to do mood stabilizer because of allergies and
Indications, yeah.
right, with those kinds of medicines, but not for lack of trying. And that was kind of the painful part after the diagnosis, was that, I had found things online. There was a, woman, her name was Julie Fast, who had written a great book about it. And she needed people to trial read her book. So I printed it out for both myself and my ex-husband, and it was great. It was a great resource, but he kind of read it, but he wouldn't give his feedback, and he wouldn't accept my diagnosis because it wasn't convenient for him.
Yeah.
Because now we realize how much I was doing and carrying things, because he had his own issues. And now I had to learn how to sleep all over again.
Yeah.
And that meant sleep medications. So, the things I probably would be up in the middle of the night doing, I'm not doing anymore. And also, I guess, the availability, to him, and focusing on him. And he, he admits it now, to the kids, that he made a big mistake in not accepting,
diagnosis.
Yeah,
because it would have been
mistreating me.
Yeah.
Mistreating me during that period where I would be in the shower sometimes almost passing out from different medications, or had the they call it restless leg.
Yes,
from
restless leg syndrome.
Some medications cause that, and he was at that time just. We weren't already having problems and not getting along, but he was horrible to me.
And for those of you that don't know what restless leg syndrome is, it's the leg, it's a muscle contraction, nerve contractions on its own, and you can't control it. It just does it, and it doesn't allow you to sleep. This is just a story, that our listeners are getting what mental health and the impact of situations in our life impact us. And therefore, we don't take actions. And I'm glad you did. Now, Lisa, I can hear where that situation led you to this book. Tell me a little bit about the book here, Faith Through the Fog, a story of hope, courage, perseverance, and healing.
So after getting to a place of being well, and, getting my support systems in place where, initially, if, I'm doing so much better now, but if my children or my friends see that I'm up, immediately I'm getting a call the next day. Okay, what's going on? Are you stressed out or, whatever? And, I also crochet. I like to crochet. And whenever I start crocheting, my daughter says, okay, so somebody's getting ready to get a gift. What's going on? You're stressed out, right? What's going on? And we talk because she's an adult now, and my son's an adult now. And, like I moved in my apartment a couple of years ago, and he and his girlfriend helped me. And the next day when they came back, my bed was made, my pillows, the bathroom was decorated, and his girlfriend said, didn't she just move here? He said, my son looked at me and he said, Ma, you have to get some sleep. You have to get your rest. Okay, I get it, but you have to get your rest. And so, I have support systems that check me, if they feel it's, not looking the way it should look. And I'm, a believer in therapy. So I keep that in check, especially during times when I'm going through stressful situations. But as I began to get better, it really became a burden, especially in my culture and other cultures that don't believe in mental illness.
Yes.
And it was the stigma and me just saying, as I saw myself being able to get better, and faith isn't denying the existence of a problem. It denies the permanency and trust that you can do something about the problem to improve things.
Yes.
Right? And so that burden led me to writing the book because I just got so tired of seeing people struggle, and sometimes it turns into addiction. And I've had so many clients tell me that had their parent accepted a diagnosis when they were young, they would have never ended up on drugs.
Yes, that's so
ADHD,
important.
they wouldn't accept it. And I get it because when my son was diagnosed with ADHD, my former mother-in-law said, "You just don't know how to parent." She wasn't.
Don't know how to parent your child.
You just don't know how to parent him. What's your problem? It's no problem. Don't give him no medication. So we had to shut people down in order to help him. But I've had many males, especially, sit before me and say, if their parent had accepted the diagnosis, they would have never started self-medicating.
Yeah. And it's also, once you accept the diagnosis, it gives you an opportunity to really do some research. So maybe you don't take some of the medication, but then you start with different tools that are available, like mindfulness. You do a lot of therapeutics things that are out there, yoga, a lot of nutrition. So you can start.
Yes.
And I think that's really, really important for the listeners. There's this holistic approach. For those of you that are out there, it's really important to consider, if you're not into medication, look at the holistic approach. But anyway, let's get back into your story and into this book. Education. Tell me a little bit about that.
On the book, I wrote on several areas and how it's impacting. And education was one of them because I also have a diagnosis of ADD.
Okay.
And so that you have trouble focusing with that, and also, of course, the bipolar. You can have trouble focusing on that, on things too. And when I started going to college, I, saw an issue with that, and I believe it was my therapist at the time, said, "Well, would you like for us to fill out documentation so that you can get involved with the Office of Disabilities at your college?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know anything about that." And so they said, "Well, go to your Office of Disabilities, ask them the process, ask them for the paperwork, and we'll fill it out." So right now, even I'm doing my master's in social work right now. And whenever I'm in school, my therapist writes the note to the school, fills out the documentation. And what happens is, online, you have to participate in discussion boards because you're on time, because your peers are relying on yours to respond to. But on assignments, each school is different, but like for exams, I get time and a half. For assignments, I get 2 weeks extra, and I try not to utilize them because, I don't like falling behind, and,
Yes.
I want to try to push past, certain things. But there are times when, something may hit and my focus is just not there.
And I want to stop you there for a second because it's really
Yeah.
important. Is a lot of people are so afraid, even if they're going to get the diagnosis, it feels like their world stopped.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing you say, you
Yes.
got the diagnosis, you continued your employment, you continued education. What it did, though, having it allowed you to create a different network and support system so that it can get you through it.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, it's more important to be aware of it so you have the tools and use the tools that, versus let me pretend nothing exists and let me live in this world of hell.
And you can't solve a problem by pretending it doesn't exist.
Yes.
It still exists, right?
It does. And, can you tell me a little bit about, like, you mentioned your relationship with your children and your ex-husband not allowing and accepting instead of doing what it ended up doing, making everything worse.
Yeah.
So, and again,
And you go through and whenever you get a diagnosis, you and those close to you go through, it's a loss, right? A loss of good health. So I talk about the stages of grief in there also.
tell me about the wisdom, the disclosure you have in the book.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that in short, you have to use wisdom when you are disclosing it to people because everybody's not listening for the right reason, right? And, I had a very close friend, and at that point, we probably were friends for about 16 years, but she had a habit that, when we don't always do things. A part of being in a relationship is to communicate when things are bothering you,
Yes.
right? So that the person can stop and you guys can, move harmoniously together. So she had this habit that whenever I confronted her about something, she would get mad, disappear for 3 months, and then come back and pretend like nothing ever happened. But I would always allow it, right? Well, one time she got upset with me and she said, "You must not have took your medication today." I was like,
Oh,
no, she did not go there.
there she go. Yeah, that's kind of one of its side notes that when people, because they don't
Yeah.
understand it, they use at anything they're not happy
Yeah.
about. Oh, it must be your problem. It
Even-
must be that because of that.
Yeah, even when I studied abroad in Costa Rica for 3 months, I was living with a lady, a widow, and they call her Doña. So they always say Doña
Doña.
and the person's name. And so at times, I just wanted to really be
Yeah.
to myself. I was very depressed, away from my family, especially my kids. And that whole thing has another
Yeah.
story in of itself. But every time she felt like I wasn't, interacting with her, everything is, es la bipolar. La bipolar.
And it's really, really sad that there's other side coin to it once you get the diagnosis, and we get this. And as we are here wrapping up, this book is amazing, and I hope all of you can see like how on point she is, how beautiful this woman is. She's got an education, she's got a beautiful employment, relationships, beautiful children, and everything that she has created. So the diagnosis has not stopped her. And
Not at
that
all.
itself is amazing. You need to read her story. You need to be okay with mental health.
Yeah.
Lisa, this
Tools
is
to
amazing.
care for yourself.
Yes, because she talks
Yeah.
about self-care. She talks about suicide, wisdom, education, employment, relationship, and what this diagnosis. So the world continues to go
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah,
So
I mentioned in there about a friend's daughter who
Yeah.
wouldn't accept the diagnosis and ended up
Yeah.
hanging herself.
And so that is
Yeah.
such a story when to talk about. Lisa, please let the audience know, where can they reach you?
So I'm working on my website, so you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook under Coach Lisa Frank Speaks.
And I can imagine your story, Lisa, the impact you do as a coach, and that is amazing.
And my book is on Amazon.
One more thing you want to share? Anything else you want to share with the audience before we're...
Yeah, I just want to encourage you that, your life doesn't end and you want to do all that you can. Everybody has something, some kind of situation that they need to deal with. So you don't have to be ashamed. You can, just do what you need to do to take care of yourself, because people around you are affected too. Yeah. So the book is not just for the person who may be diagnosed. The book is for those around you as well, like employees and family members, and because sometimes they're looking at you and don't understand, well, why is she acting that way, or why is he acting that way? Yeah. So it's a book for everybody. It can help anybody.
It's a book of faith, and this has been an amazing episode. And hi, I am Dr. Luz Maria.
And I'm Coach Lisa Frank, and this is Different
Voices. Welcome to Different Voices. I am Dr. Luz.